Hi friends, welcome to the NPTEL course Leadership for India Inc. Practical Concepts and Constructs. We are in week 5 beginning to discuss leadership process. In this lecture we will focus on self-actualization. As you will recall, self-actualization is a concept that I have propounded towards the end of the first lecture. It is an important axiom of positive organizational behavior. It is the ultimate goal of employee development. Self actualization is the process of using one's skills and abilities to the fullest extent and achieving as much as one can possibly achieve. While self actualization is described as a very important goal of the need hierarchy, available literature does not have a very structured process construct for achieving self actualization. I would therefore focus on self actualization at some detail in this lecture. The concept of self actualization is applicable to every individual, from a common man to the head of state. It is relevant to multiple sets of people. For example, students aspiring to choose their careers, entrants in organizations seeking to develop their careers, managers in their mid careers, business leaders at the helm. As considered in an earlier lecture, the concept of self actualization has been a powerful driver of organizational behavior theory. Unfortunately, self actualization is not backed by an appropriate process construct that would help people to master it. In fact, leaders are not even considered within the ambit of self actualization because they are considered already self actualized individuals. What are the operative parts of self-actualization process? There are two sets of parts. One relates to skills and abilities and the other relates to goals and achievements. Skills are the capabilities the individual has in him or her. Works are the jobs undertaken by the individual based on the skills he possesses. Goals are the objectives that have been set, while the results are nothing but the final outcomes and accomplishments. Viewed in this manner, the self actualization process looks fairly simple. If you set proper goals based on the skills you have, you are likely to achieve certain results through the activities you perform, and therefore self actualization happens. But this simplistic construct flatters to deceive, I would say. We need to have a very rigorous process of self actualization that would be useful for young executives, potential leaders, and even accomplished leaders. Why does the concept falter? Because we do not look at the long term goal when we are embarking on any particular phase of our life. From school to college, from the starting organization to the ending organization, we see our life, particularly the academic life and the professional life, only in parts, the two of immediate term in each phase. For example, as a college student, we look at the best course to take, the best institute to get in, the best rank to get. As a graduate, we aspire for a company of our choice, we try to get a job of high satisfaction. As a working professional, we seek a title and role that is appropriate in our mindset, and we always try to reach the top. None of these, however, leads one in a structured way onto the self actualization goal. Individuals tend to lack an understanding of what they really would like to become and what they are intrinsically capable of becoming. They tend to benchmark themselves with others rather than engage in a process of self discovery. It is important, therefore, that we have a paradigm of self actualization that is end to end, from the start of one's academic journey to the expected end of one's active, not necessarily formal, professional and social life, and to self actualize all the way. That's very important. This slide you have seen in the first lecture, but let me repeat it. The journey of self actualization is a 5 component mantra, starting with self discovery and culminating in self actualization. It is an iterative journey. During the first step, we discover our own abilities. In the second step, we seek to convert our abilities into broader competencies which would be helpful in accomplishing certain tasks. Once we understand what we are, and we also understand that we have the necessary competencies we aspire, and typically we should set high aspirations, then we engage in the fourth step of leveraging our competencies to achieve aspirations. And when we do that perfectly well, we actualize ourselves. self actualization happens, also actualization of the team, society, and the nation. It is an iterative journey, it doesn't end at one point of time. If you thought that as an executive your goal is to actualize yourself as a managerial person, it doesn't mean that the journey ends once you become a manager. You would like to become something bigger than that, probably a leader, and a leader probably a CEO, and a CEO probably a national stalwart. It goes on and on, as long as that is in tandem with your self discovery process. Self actualization, therefore, is becoming what one is capable of becoming. And trust me, the satisfaction that emerges from self actualization can be truly fulfilling for everyone. Let's look at an example of a journey of self actualization. It is a 5 step process, I said, and let's see how that stepwise process works out. Phase 1 could be the starting phase, which is probably 2 to 5 year phase. In this phase, we apply our scientific, engineering, professional, or liberal arts skills that we have in the job we have been able to get. It is a process of self discovery of one's skills and abilities, and that is the fundamental building block. In the next phase, which is probably 8 to 10 year phase, and in that phase we try to prove ourselves substantially and significantly in the eyes of everyone in the organization. Therefore, we try to acquire new hard skills in other domains, also with reinforcement of the soft skills we have. So, we are all the time converting our intrinsic capabilities into tangible competencies, and also we are acquiring synergistic capabilities. In phase 3, which probably could last 5 to 10 years, we tend to assume leadership positions beyond the standard and the routine. We set our aspirations in a lens that is consistent with one's value systems and inner aspirations. Then the very important phase, phase 4 of 10 to 15 years happens as we try to become the CEO of an established company. We try to leverage our competencies in multiple ways and achieve that aspiration. Thereafter, what happens? It doesn't end there. We would like to spread our knowledge, diffuse our experience in terms of various ventures. There could be social ventures, there could be non-profit ventures, there could be academic ventures. You may also establish a startup which will leverage your knowledge and experience to generate new products and services, bring wealth for the society, and also provide a legacy in terms of your personal contributions to the society. Assessing the level of self-actualization periodically and going through this journey from a new phase of self-discovery during each cycle takes place. And this total professional journey, if it is considered to be one seamless movement wherein you have assessed at the beginning of the journey itself that yes, this is my goal. I would like to end as the CEO of an established company, my formal assignment, and thereafter I would like to contribute something to the society, either in a commercial venture or a social venture. Suppose you have that kind of goal and journey path, then you can see that this entire 40 to 50 years of career journey is one seamless road to self-actualization. However, rarely it happens that way. Probably you will end up thinking of phase 3 as your phase 5. In which case there would be extrapolation of various other parameters into that journey, or that journey itself will be extended into a longer journey path. That's the actual situation that could be encountered by many of the people. Whichever way you proceed, phase 1 and phase 3 are important phases. Phase 1 lays the foundation, while phase 3 opens up new possibilities. Phase 3 is an inflection point. Phase 2 and 4 are different in the sense that they expect you to acquire new skills, have new competencies, and significantly break the mold and become something what you are capable of becoming. And phase 5 is intensely personal. You may choose to have a phase 5 of different types, or you may choose not to have any phase 5 and be just a philosophical person at that point of time. We don't know. The fundamental drivers for self-actualization as a journey, I would say, is intensely personal. It is neither easy nor is it one of mere followership. Just because our friends have self-actualized ourselves in different ways, we cannot follow any of those paths, because it is a personal journey of innovation and courage, a journey in which an individual grows with his or her broader residential unit, be it a home, classroom, corporation, society, a nation, or even the world, but develops his or her own unique footprint. I would again repeat that the fundamental starting point of self actualization is self discovery, and the enabler is the ability to convert the capabilities into competencies, that is, the application. And the motivator for aspirations is a larger purpose in life. And performance bridges our aspirations and our achievements and enables us to actualize ourselves. And if you are able to transform the society in this journey, it will become authentic leadership, which everyone will recognize and applaud. There are three fundamental drivers to go through this iterative process. Again and again, I repeat: openness to understand oneself. Secondly, understanding ourselves in the context of contemporary and futuristic developments, and having a high degree of clarity on the part of the individual on how far the individual would like to go. Maslow argued that self actualized people are firmly grounded in the real world. He stated that many excellent scientists possess this quality and that it drives them to learn more about the unknown, the ambiguous, and the unstructured. As you have seen from a previous lecture, Abraham Maslow was the one who propounded the hierarchy of needs, and self actualization was the primal superior need in his need hierarchy. Einstein, the greatest scientist we have seen, once said, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all art and science." What it means is that self actualization is getting into something which we cannot see visibly today. It is something abstract, something mysterious, something which beckons us to come and explore. But the path is not very sure, and whether we will be able to achieve that is also not very sure. Yet, the challenge and the satisfaction lies in following that path, trying to convert that abstract into reality and fulfill ourselves and also the organizations we are heading. Some of the greatest achievers actualize themselves in their laboratories or corporations, but could simultaneously transform social and industrial living. And they are cognizant of the impact they made on the larger academic institutions, even if they are working in a laboratory, or on the larger social life, even if they are academic professors or professional executives. So, what does self discovery mean? Self discovery is understanding yourself without any biases and blinkers. We will be burdened with biases and blinkers, and those cloud our ability to discover our own capabilities, because our own capabilities are always interpreted for us by the ecosystem in which we are living. These are also accentuated or attenuated by education, experience, and familial circumstances, no doubt. So, let's look at some blinkers we have. Family experiences tend to be supportive in general because the family members would like one to progress, but they could also force some misaligned expectations and unmatched role models, like determining which course you need to take and which job you need to have, or which kind of life partner you need to have. These are one set of blinkers. Friends are an extremely important component of our human development. Friends act as both positive and negative influence on self-discovery. In an earlier lecture, we considered how the friend circle can influence certain types of personality behaviors in people. The third one is the college or university education. If it has a liberal slant, it can help broaden one's external perspectives and deepen the internal ones. If, on the other hand, it is learning by rote, then you are likely to have a very narrow view of the subjects you try to master. And finally, the work span. That is the longest phase of experiences in one's professional life. It provides many conflict points. You constantly face several dynamics. You are fed with several incentives as well as penalties. Penalties not necessarily in terms of physical harm or financial harm. Penalties in terms of lack of recognition or negative feedback, things like that. All these factors, the family experiences, the friend experiences, the university experiences, and the work experiences, create several blinkers in an individual as the individual tries to understand oneself. For the process of self discovery to be effective, individuals need to introspect without blinkers and biases that have been accumulated in the journey of life. For that, identification of the blinkers and bias itself is the first step. We have to keep in mind that people who were born with some special skills, earlier it used to be said special handicaps, but that is no longer the right way to express that special skills. Those people have actually risen to very high levels of performance and recognition because they discovered what they could do. Mozart, the musical genius who lacked social skills, is undoubtedly the musical genius appreciated by the entire world. Then Richard Branson, he was the CEO who overcame dyslexia. Sudha Chandran is a noted dancer from the south of India. She has Jaipur leg. That is, the leg was had to be removed, and then she dances today with Jaipur leg, which is a huge challenge and huge demonstration of the capability. So the self-discovery of what you can achieve will lead you on to doing something which is befitting your capabilities. And to be able to do that, you should steer clear of the blinkers and biases brought on to you and your psychology by the world's ecosystem. So I said self-discovery is an important aid for leaders seeking to self-actualize themselves. As we will consider in some of the later lectures, the time is not now to consider those factors. But when we come to that, you will understand leaders are positioned to be and also do feel lonely at the top. It is difficult for them to secure seasoned mentors. Leaders must therefore hone their skills of self-awareness and self-discovery from early on. And to be able to do that, we should work from the young age. We should understand our aptitude fundamentally. We can discover the aptitude all by ourselves, or we could get it discovered by someone else, or it could lay undiscovered by the person. Suppose you discover by yourself and you happen to be operating in the same domain as the aptitude, then it is a virtuous alignment. On the other hand, if your aptitude is in pharmaceutical sciences and you are operating in engineering domain, it is a different operating domain, and therefore the full potential of your aptitude is constrained. Suppose it is not discovered by the individual, but happen to work in the same domain as the aptitude would like to operate, then you would happiness, which is not really explained by you or understood by you, nevertheless you feel the happiness and the motivation to do better. You do not know what you are and what you want to be, and you also happen to be working in a domain which is completely different from the undiscovered aptitude, then there would be a lot of dissonance, lot of incongruity in what you do. So the aptitude operation match or mismatch is a very significant determinant of how you can self-discover the match or the mismatch. That's why you should understand your own aptitude fundamentally and try to locate a domain which suits your aptitude rather than let it be a random walk into the arena of professional life. So self-discovery of the match or the mismatch between aptitude and operation is very much necessary. And also, in case the alignment is not appropriate, you should make the right switch or make the right reinforcement at some point of time or the other. This process of self-discovery is an objective introspection and realistic exploration of your strengths and weaknesses. You would like to play to your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. Some of these points you can really relate to your own life and feel that yes, I do experience these kinds of happenings in my life, and probably these principles would help me align myself better or align my work better with what I have as my aptitude and do much better as an individual and as a professional executive. That said, there are many examples of self-discovery and realignment. It is not that we are blessed to have a complete and integrated operations aptitude match. There are several examples of pharmacists studying or grasping engineering and building pharmaceutical plants. For whatever reason, individuals may take up pharmaceutical sciences, but over a period of study, they have a very unique understanding of the engineering aspects of pharmaceutical plants, and they have blossomed into first-class pharmaceutical technology officers. In the previous class, we have discussed about R.S. Prasad as a technocrat leader, and he was one such pharmaceutical scientist who began building engineering marvels without losing any of his scientific capabilities to create new recipes, new formulations, and so on. Similarly, there are chemical engineers who have become kings on the shop floor. They brought in the transport phenomena to understand how the bulk drug processes move on the shop floor. They developed a newer continuous in situ mechanisms for having reactor configurations, and therefore developed new ways of pharmaceutical production. So it is chemical engineers doing a bit of chemistry. The introspective understanding, whereby one's skills, abilities, and aptitudes are appraised to help one discover one's path of self actualization, that is extremely important. Many times, friends, peers, and mentors hold a mirror to ourselves, and they play a helpful role in our discovery process. Equally, organizational inequalities and inequities, professional alienations, and the biases which unfortunately other people have, and at times social scorn, if they are not tackled with a negative mindset, they could stop the process of self discovery. However, with a positive mindset, you can overcome all of these hurdles and still be on the path of self discovery. Process of self discovery happens many times, and each time is an inflection point in one's life. It would launch an individual onto a new path of self actualization. Otherwise, people would continue to be in the closed box that their life has begun to feel. For example, the treatment meted out to Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi in South Africa on a railway station challenged him to not only discover his capabilities but also recharter his life journey completely. He began reflecting on what happened. He began philosophizing on what happened. He also saw a larger purpose for life in his own life, and therefore he became the father of independence movement over a period of time. That is the self discovery that such a great leader had to undertake at some point of time in his life. As I said, the second part is the competency building. It is not sufficient for us to discover our own abilities, skills, and aptitudes. I may discover that my ability is to write well. Somebody else's ability could be to speak well. Somebody else's ability is to crunch numbers very well. These aptitudes are likely to be there in a very dominant fashion, in one or more shades, in every individual. We must necessarily have the confidence and commitment to convert them into tangible competencies. This process of conversion is influenced by contextual setting as well as leader and personal commitment. While all the three are important, personal commitment is extremely important. The contextual setting. Industry and firm structures are the ones which set the context, and the leader and person backgrounds are the ones which set the context. The leader commitment, how the leader would be able to spot the competence and hone the competence. I have told you my personal example of the leader having been able to spot my capability to present alternate points of view, and seeing in me a great strategic leadership coming up in future. So that is the leader commitment for you. And finally, the personal commitment, that is your commitment that I will recognize my own capability and I will gain from myself as well as from the leader who will be wanting to help me. When this happens, then the competency building will take place in a complete manner. Every time you can reassess the path you are taking. Let's say you are undergoing engineering education, but you have aptitude in biology. We can sulk about that very much, or try to do another course again in biology, or you can say that neither of that is going to help me in my career, let me do an MBA. I mean, different people think in different ways, but you can think in a synergistic way. I have anyway undergone an engineering education. I do have aptitude in biology. Why not I become a biomedical engineer? You can think on those lines. There are several people who are engineers but who have got very good quantitative skills, and they have become top-notch genetic scientists in the field of molecular biology and in the face of genetics. That is the switch that is possible in today's educational system, and one should be willing to build our competencies that way. Even in the workplace, if we are able to demonstrate that even if I am an industrial engineer, I have got the ability to correlate and relate with the events as well as persons, and therefore I should be in a human resources division or some other division. Today's workplace permits those kinds of lateral changes. So our willingness to discover our abilities and convert them into competencies is extremely important, and for that we need to have our own personal commitment. It is the commitment of the individual to develop and deploy one's skills into and as competencies that the world will recognize. Our abilities the world will not recognize, but our competencies the world will recognize, because the competencies are going to help us accomplish certain tasks. And this kind of conversion from abilities as understood by us into competencies which the world will recognize is not an easy task at all. We may have the skill of a domain, but if you are in a domain which is not in our skill, we have seen how hard it is to align both of these situations. At all times, there would be some level of out of box thinking that would be required to be able to convert our abilities into specific competencies, contextually relevant, supported by the leader, and enthusing ourselves personally. So, how do we achieve these strategic skills? How can we become a better executive, better manager, better leader? We all have our basic education. Then we must really focus on the specialization that we must do. That is an opportunity. Fortunately, in today's higher education, we have the option to have several electives, and you may go beyond your own department to accumulate credits in various other departments, and nothing prevents us. Thereafter, we should think of our super specialization and finally have an amalgamated skill set. Therefore, for education also, you require a strategic educational planning, including meaningful continuous education for making the most of the learning and development opportunity and challenge that we face all the time in today's competitive world. A professional knowledge worker in a corporation with a passion for social service, what should he do? He should not think that having the passion for social service is enough. He or she would need to have communication skills, because social service is nothing but engaging with supporters of the cause as also the receivers of the support. So we have to be effective in communication, and communication is not simply talking some messages to somebody else. It is understanding the real requirements, communicating in an empathetic manner, receiving the feedback, and modifying our actions. So communication is a large subject, and to acquire those communication skills, one should really work. Similarly, a shop floor engineer with a flair for industrial design would need to have the skills to understand the marketplace, to be able to develop a canvas of effectiveness and actualization. When somebody says we have to have the shortest go to market strategy, he should not see it as a series of steps that have to be accomplished like a project manager. He should understand the overall market concept and what the market really puts a premium on, what it discounts, and how should I produce my product in such a way that not only time to market but also the rightness to the market are achieved. So the process of self-discovery would need to identify the bridging skills that are required for integrating the intrinsic skills, the convertible skills, the synergistic skills, so that we have a complete set of competencies which would support self-actualization. Let's seek the situation of information technology professionals. Coding languages keep changing. We need to be always at the forefront of skill augmentation. Competency building becomes a major challenge for IT professionals, and that becomes even perilous if we don't consider external benchmarking of developments. At one point of time, C++ was the established computer language. Then Java became the established computer language. Everybody started skirting COBOL, common business oriented language. But today, COBOL is also very much necessary. Therefore, there is nothing which you can discard, and there is nothing we can welcome without really understanding the strategic import. You can take another computer language. It starts with R, then we get into Python programming, and then you get into G, which is a new computer language. This means that we are getting into a newer age of Internet of Things, and you require these kinds of languages. We also need to practice machine learning languages. Microsoft has come up with its own machine learning languages. Apache has come up with its own machine learning languages. So the language sets which you need to learn has increased tremendously. From just one language, we have 9 languages which an IT professional needs to learn if the professional wants to be there, wherever the opportunity would emerge. So in one's competency building exercise, The previous step of self-discovery needs to be supplemented by benchmarking in terms of both challenges as well as the opportunities, so that you become a well-rounded personality of required competencies. Now we come to the step of setting the aspirations. And how would you set the aspirations? You can set it from two angles: one the work angle and other personal life angle. From a career point of view, you may say that I would like to be a CEO or COO. From an economic point of view, you would say that I would like to make my firm or my entity a wealth creator. And because I would like to have socio-economic purpose, I would also like to make the society better. And if you are a broad-minded executive, you may like to have a combination of all of these factors. From a personal point of view, you would like to make money for yourself, have social recognition. You may like to protect your family because family has protected you until you became independent. So a protective streak could be there in your aspiration. You may say that like Bill Gates or others, I must do my own small bit for the society. So you may tend to become philanthropic. Again, there could be a combination of drivers for you in your personal life. So the professional life and personal life would have aspirations which are distinct and distinctive to you as well as to the domain. There exist many ways of looking for appropriate expression of aspirations depending on the individual and other perspectives. It would be very simplistic or incorrect to equate everything to material benefits. Not every CEO would be materialistic and be focused only on salary maximization. Different leaders would have different motivations in leading their companies. The chairman of State Bank of India, which is the largest bank we have, could be earning salary which is probably a fraction of what the CEO of a private sector bank earns today. However, his satisfaction level, his motivation level is no less, and the challenges he faces and the inspirations he has in undertaking his job are no less. And some of the challenges are absolute booby traps, such as non-performing assets which keep ballooning, and to be able to control all that with a fractional salary as a private banker's salary is a different life game which he is willing to play. Similarly, a CEO who is helping a low-paying infrastructure company need not necessarily be less satisfied than a highly paid CEO in an FMCG company. That would happen when the infrastructure CEO views the job he is doing as something which is building the infrastructure for the nation. When the CEO of Larsen and Toubro, a company which builds infrastructural projects all over the country, and when the CEO looks at those infrastructural projects, he may derive much greater satisfaction from these infrastructural achievements under his leadership than probably a comparison of the salary check with other private CEOs. A CEO may earn a lot of money, as Azim Premji created wealth through his computer operations, but the CEO may derive great satisfaction by sharing the wealth with several others in the process of wealth generation as well as wealth distribution. Bill Gates was another example who laid out the path for moving away from high-paying mainstream professional avocation to something which is philanthropic and which helps certain segments of our national building or international building, such as healthcare, sanitation, and things like that. Academicians are happy with low levels of salary because they see themselves as nation builders. When their students become COOs and CEOs or top-notch administrators, they never compare themselves with those CEOs and the achievements they have made vis-a-vis the continuous teaching they are doing in a classroom. They see themselves as builders of future leaders, builders of nation. That's what keeps them motivated. Similarly, a doctor who is highly accomplished or a surgeon who is dexterous at his work, he will look at establishing a hospital not merely as a business proposition but as a means to convert his capabilities to serve the family and the community that brought him up or her up. As a savior of, he or she may see himself or herself as a savior of lives, and greater provision of healthcare through the mechanism of hospital would provide him or her with greater level of satisfaction than just being a clinician in a clinical setting. So it is important that the three objectives of self-actualization for career, economic and social drivers are leveraged in appropriate manner by the CEOs and CEO aspirants. That is extremely important. We all also must have this concept of socialistic materialism. Socialism, by definition, means that wealth should not be concentrated in a few hands. It should be available in an egalitarian manner. It requires that social service and power play must be exercised wisely, because we need to understand that social aspirations also need material backbone to be able to serve the society effectively. By and large, a socialist economy has higher levels of taxes. And why are higher levels of taxes required? Because the government wants to support the indigent sections of the population through the tax incomes that are collected from the companies as well as the rich, which means that every social activity will require certain material support, which means again that we should look at social service as a self-supporting activity. You need to create wealth so that you can support a social cause, and you need to create wealth in an equitable fashion looking at the socio-economic needs. Therefore, a sublime emotional aspiration as helping the society will require material power and organizational vehicle to provide the traction. Similarly, every material aspiration of rising to the pinnacle of the organization may also have the higher emotional aspiration of serving a larger community. That happened, as I said, in the case of Azim Premji. It has happened in the case of Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. We may also say that why should we as leaders have material visibility? If we become leaders, we will be seen as materialistic. That is not wrong. Organization structure and organizational leadership are essential parts of serving the society. If you look at the greatest philosophers or religious leaders, they also have their own organizations and visibility to propagate their thoughts and alleviate social distress, whether it is Jaggi Vasudev of Isha Foundation or Sri Sri Ravi Shankar of the Art of Living Foundation or several other religious and philosophical heads. They have full-fledged organizations because organizations are required to receive funding to be able to serve the indigent people or people in social and philosophical distress. Therefore, being seclusive, being self-effacing is not an answer, even if you want to serve the society. As long as you have the required competencies to serve an organization or to support a well-generating mission, you should do so, utilizing your competencies only with the more altruistic vision of using that wealth that you create for the public good. As long as that superordinate goal is there, striving for material development of your organization or yourself is not at all contrary to the superordinate goal of social service that you have. That's socialistic materialism as I would present. I would also present the concept of authentic leadership. What is that? By discovering your competencies in the right manner, reinforcing the competencies and setting aspirations, we set a pathway for the world to see our accomplishments in an appropriate light. The alignment between the competencies and the aspirations and the performance determines the self-actualization of leaders. So during the executive phase, as I discussed in respect of certain examples, you have all the opportunity to demonstrate grassroots leadership as an individual, and the pull of your leader would be evident when you are able to demonstrate the grassroots leadership. In the management phase, you will be demonstrating in an increasing measure your managerial and leadership capabilities, and you will have the supportive behavior of your manager or leader, as the case may be, in managerial and leadership development phases. And finally, in the leadership phase, you will be completely demonstrating your leadership behavior with appropriate mentoring from the CEO, the apex leader, or the board. Authentic leadership at any stage of this journey from executive to leader is born out of conviction about your competencies and aspirations. This is the point I would keep coming back every time I talk about self-actualization, because self-actualization is not going to be anything unless you have time for self-discovery of your capabilities, have time to convert those capabilities into competencies, and have the zeal in you to set aspirations at a higher level. And when that happens, the word authentic, which means real, genuine, true, and accurate, has great relevance to the actualization journey. The more authentic a leader is, the more leadership capabilities the leader will get imbued with. And even if you are not a leader, if you are seen as an individual, if you are seen as an authentic leader delivering on your competencies and performance, then the leadership capabilities will automatically be imbued to you. That is very important. So, what are the three components? Competencies, aspirations, and convictions. Aspirations many times become externally induced when the leader of the organization says that my aspiration is to increase my market share from 20% to 30%. It translates itself into an aspiration for you as the sales head to connect with more customers, provide more product choices, service the customers better, and in wanting to do so, discover your own skills and capabilities to be able to do that. Similarly, competence. They may be carry forwards from your education phase, but they need to be continuously reinforced. There would be many techniques that you would need to learn during the marketing phase. Education may teach you the traveling salesman's problem or how to optimize your path, keeping all the resources and constraints in mind, and that is an excellent analytical approach. But in actual sales and marketing, you learn much more than that. Not only optimization of your time, but you also learn how to deploy information technology in real time to be able to multitask and meet not only the customers but also the stockists, wholesalers, be in communication with your head office. There are so many other things which you learn in the actual marketplace, and you would actually be simulating a whole number of situations in the actual marketplace. And convictions, they arise from your self-discovery and benchmark. This three-part framework is demonstrated extremely well in operation by Dr. Pratap Reddy, who is the founder of Apollo Hospitals Group India. Dr. Pratap Reddy was a heart physiologist. He was a physician who returned from US to practice in Chennai. He set up Apollo Hospitals towards the late 1970s, but he never ended his journey by setting up the hospital and be happy with that. That was only the start of his self-actualization journey. He converted that into setting up a chain of hospitals all over the India and also in some neighboring countries. As a result, he could transform Apollo Hospitals from a Greaves Road main hospital to a chain of hospitals all over the country. And also he created a brand for Apollo Hospitals as the leading corporate hospital group in India. And also he developed several adjunct businesses along with the hospitals business as part of the overall healthcare mission. So he actualized himself in the process as the leading healthcare icon of India. He can look back at his life with satisfaction, saying that I wrought a huge transformation in the way healthcare is provided for the citizens, and mostly for citizens who could afford, but also a small percentage for citizens who cannot afford. In any case, it has opened up new vistas of healthcare with the better diagnostic capabilities and better therapeutic capabilities. In this five-stage journey of self-actualization, the aspect of convictions, as I said, doesn't figure explicitly, but it is an underlying concept that works throughout. You will not discover your capabilities unless you have conviction that it is a capability. You will not be able to convert that capability into a competence unless you have conviction that yes, this is the match between my capability and competency. Nor would you set up activities or aspirations without having convictions about your ability to deliver on them, even if it is with some stretch goals and stretch effort. Therefore, without conviction, the journey of self-actualization cannot be gone through. It may not have been mentioned as one specific driver of self-actualization journey, but it is implicit in every of the five phases of self-actualization journey. An authentic leader is largely self-made. History teaches us that most of the top leaders of the world fought their way against adversities. They drew upon their inner sinews or inner strengths. They demonstrate also to us that in any domain, authentic leadership helps individuals actualize themselves and in the process also help teams, societies, and nations. Thomas Edison is the inventive genius. He never gave up at all. He kept on trying. Even if one experiment failed, he kept on trying for more successful experiments, and in the process he made fundamental discoveries. As a result of that, he made fundamental discoveries in the field of electrical engineering. Then Walt Disney, he became a wizard of animation movies because he believed that that is the way that would keep huge blocks of population truly entertained, and he created several original characters which have greater life and greater attraction than even normal human lives. Then we have Henry Ford, the pioneer in automobile manufacture. Dhirubhai Ambani, who founded this equity culture in India and also paved the way for private sector companies to establish mega enterprises of world scale and world scope. Srinivasa Ramanujam, an Indian mathematical genius who worked in India as well as abroad to take mathematics to the next higher frontier, and many people could not solve his equations and his puzzles easily. Then Devi Prasad Shetty, founder of Narayan Hrudayalaya. He was a cardiac surgeon who established another chain of hospitals as Apollo has established and contributed significantly to the healthcare system. So it is the ability of each of such individuals, global or Indian, to find the true spark of life and pursue that path, which made these leaders become what they were and currently are. Their technological, academic, and healthcare legacies have been self-made. This journey of self-actualization is also an iterative journey. It is very interesting that you can be an expert and a much loved person in one field, but you could become a leader leveraging your skills and capabilities and your level of popularity and charisma to become a leader in another field. We have several actors, both the Western setting as well as in the Indian setting. Actors who became political leaders and then governmental leaders. Ronald Reagan, a famous example in the United States. M.G. Ramachandran, an actor who became the Chief Minister of the state of Tamil Nadu. N.T. Ramarao, who was a great mythological and social and folklore actor who became Chief Minister of the state of Andhra Pradesh. J. Jayalalitha, who was an actor in South Indian films, became a Chief Minister and ruled the state for several terms. Creative fields are in fact well known for affording ample opportunities for enhanced levels of self-actualization. As a corollary, if individuals pursue paths of creativity, opportunities would abound for actualization. But not every creative person would like to seek that path. Only those creative persons who see their charisma as a route to serve the larger society would probably take that route. Then we have this change agent concept. I keep coming back to the concept of Pratap Reddy changing the healthcare situation because he did change. From one hospital in 1980 to the largest corporate hospital network of India in 2020 with 10,000 beds across 70 hospitals, 2,556 pharmacies, over 172 primary care and diagnostic clinics, 148 telemedicine units across 13 countries, and 80 plus Apollo Munich insurance branches spanning the length and breadth of the country is a great achievement, having started with the first hospital in the Grimm's Road entity in Chennai. That's great achievement. Not only that, the best of the diagnostic facilities are being made available. The chain 340 slice CT scanner is now available from Apollo for the first time. Similarly, the Proton Center for Cancer Therapy, the radiation knives, Da Vinci surgical robots, they are being made available in the Apollo hospitals chains as cutting edge technologies for the Indian population without Indian people needing to go abroad for advanced Medicare, and also encouraging medical tourism. That is, people who are in need of cost-effective medical solutions coming to India. Then, of course, we have Ratan Tata, who is the chairman of Tata Sons, who stepped into the illustrious shoes of J.R.D. Tata, but left his own footprint, his own blueprint on the development of the Tata Group. India has largest salt to software conglomerate, has several companies which are all leaders in their own areas, from Tata Chemicals and Tata Communications to Tata Consultancy Services, Tata Consumer Products, Tata Motors, Tata Elxsi, Tata Power, Tata Steel, you name it, you have the company of Tata Group in every endeavor of socio-economic activity. And finally, Jaguar Land Rover also in the global automotive arena. We also have in Muhammad Yunus, a change agent. He was an academician in Bangladesh who also became a social entrepreneur, a banker, economist, and a civil society leader. He came up with the concept of microfinance for the first time in an organized manner, that the poorest of the poor who do not have access to the banking facilities must be having an institutional support to meet their needs, and that was called microfinance initiative. He set up the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, which was a runaway hit. He was also awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for his concepts of microcredit and microfinance. His path-breaking work ushered in the microfinance movement not only in Bangladesh but in several countries, including India. So authentic leadership is visible leadership. It is felt leadership. People will be able to see competencies and the conviction that is driving the competencies into great aspirations as well as accomplishments. Therefore, we should stay true to the definition of authentic, which is real, genuine, true, and accurate. It has great relevance to the actualization journey. And the more authentic a leader is, the more leadership capabilities one gets imbued with, as I told even earlier. We should also have trust in our own competencies and ethics, because an authentic leader inspires trust because he tends to be a performing leader. There could be several ways to do a particular thing. Being in the forefront of actualization and leading with actualization doesn't mean that only one way is the way to go about. There could be multiple ways, but one way would be the best. At the same time, there cannot be randomly any number of ways. For example, we have hundreds of students. That doesn't mean that we can have 100 ways of studying science, engineering, or management. There is one good way. Similarly, there are a few good ways of designing, manufacturing, and marketing products. Authentic leadership means doing things in a real, true, and good way, not about doing things in an individual way. We need not individualize our performance, try to distinguish ourselves with or from others, saying that I want to be authentic to my personality. That is not the right approach. Authentic is being true to your capabilities and being true to your aspirations and achievements. That is the efficiency and effectiveness, which we have talked about over several lectures in the previous weeks. Therefore, from individual leadership in the initial years to corporate or organizational leadership towards the senior years, self-actualization is really a highly thoughtful, competency-based, aspiration-pursuing journey of authentic leadership, and we must see how this authenticity must be preserved. For that, we have to keep asking some questions of ourselves and of others. Frequently, we ask this question: have I understood myself? You should ask, have others understood me? It is not enough that you understand yourself, others also must understand. Do I get results? There is a frequent question we pose for ourselves. But the question to ask is, do I contribute my best to the task? As I said in the case of R.S. Prasad's leadership, you do right things, the right results will follow. Is my tone authentic? Then the question could be, do I choose authenticity over safety? There is a lot of difference being authentic and being safe. How do I rise to the top? The right question should be, am I reaching my potential? These 4 questions are enough to indicate that the same objective of the question, by framing the question in an appropriate manner, could be utilized to bring out the best in your actualization journey. Evaluative questions, honest responses, which are solicited as well as unsolicited in terms of feedback, these would be extremely critical for an appropriate actualization journey. I would say that there are 10 elements of self-actualization, all relating to what we can call self. Self-awareness, self-appraisal, self-confidence, self-control, self-development, self-discipline, self-expression, self-improvement, self-motivation, self-respect. If you have all of these things, you would be an individual who is self-actualized. But interestingly, if you look at those 30 developmental, performance, and apex leadership attributes, you will find that whatever I have said as being related to self are the expressions or the outcomes of some of those leadership qualities. If you have those leadership qualities and you are able to properly utilize them, you will be able to have such understanding about yourself that you can easily self-actualize yourself. This is important. So staying true to your leadership attributes is one aspect of self-actualization. Reflection and introspection, that is a meditative approach which can be self-administered, which tends to be philosophical at times. That is one of the very important aspects of self-discovery. Analysis of strengths and weaknesses, that is, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, it tends to be transactional. The context determines your strengths and weaknesses. You may be very strong in mathematics, for example, and if you are in a quantitative oriented job, that would be your strength. But if you are in a job which is highly interpersonal related, that need not necessarily be your strength. Something else could be your strength. So it is a kind of very contextual and transactional activity. Then you may have personality assessments. That is, somebody will assess you based on certain predetermined questionnaires and based on certain field research experience already gained in such assessments. These are complex, usually licensed and certified, but these are personality classifications. Then you also can have simple online assessments, which are simple and easy to self-administer. You can get into a website and have some questions answered, and they will say whether you are intellectually driven or whether you are driven by passion, whether you are driven by accomplishment and things like that. But many times these analyses tend to be misleading readings. So the risk of reliance on the two types of analytical tools is that they provide a snapshot judgment based on questionnaire administration. Standardization that is inherent in the process goes against customization. Obviously, as the universe of their analysis expands, there is a greater likelihood that the personality assessments would be more reflective of the actual situational developments. Even then, these are loss of averages. You are bucketed in respect of certain personality traits, whereas you may not necessarily be that in certain industrial settings or business settings. But we have to acknowledge that the personality analytical tools have some utility. So let's look at one such type indicator. Myers and Briggs type indicator is one of the most popular personality inventory analysis tools. It makes the theory of psychological types described by C.G. Jung originally into an understandable and useful perspective for people's lives. The essence of the theory is that much seemingly random variation in our behavior is actually quite orderly and consistent. That's because we have certain basic differences in the ways individuals prefer to use their perception and judgment. As a result, they have classified on 4 dimensions each person, and therefore 16 types of personalities and 4 types of preferences emerge as below. So the basic viewpoints, or if you want to look at the world, would I look at the world from an introverted perspective or an extroverted perspective? If you want to look at decision making, would I be a thinking decision maker or a feeling decision maker? That is, are you an emotional decision maker? When you talk about information, do you go by sensing or do you go by intuition? And structure, are you a very judgmental person or are you a perceiving person? So based on that, you get into 16 personality classifications, which are further explained in this thing. So the personality types or extroverts who are energized by people enjoy a variety of tasks at a quick pace and are good at multitasking. Sensors are those people who are realistic and who would like to focus on facts and details. They apply their common sense and past experience to find practical solutions to problems. Then we have thinkers. They tend to make their decisions using logical analysis, objectively weigh pros and cons, and value honesty, consistency, and fairness. Judges, they tend to be organized and prepared. They like to make and stick to plans and are comfortable following most rules. Introverts are people who are the opposite of extroverts. They like working alone or in small groups. They prefer a more deliberate pace and like to focus on one task at a time. Intuitives are the other extreme of sensors. They prefer to focus on possibilities and the big picture, easily see patterns, value innovation, and seek creative solutions to problems. Feelers tend to be sensitive and cooperative. They decide based on their own personal values and how others will be affected by their actions. Perceivers are in the judging category at a different polarity. They prefer to keep their options open, like to be able to act spontaneously, and like to be flexible and making plans. So if you see combinations of, let's say, an extrovert who is also intuitive, who is also a thinker, and who is also a perceiver, you will get a particular suitability of the personality type and a job profile. On the other hand, you have an introvert who wants to also be a sensor and wants to be sensitive and who wants to be a perceiver, you can get a better match than the job which the other person got. So that is the important contribution from the personality types which we have. So there is an article which I would urge you to see in the Harvard Business Review, January-February 2015, which says that authenticity has become the gold standard for leadership. But a simplistic understanding of what it means can hinder your growth and limit your impact. Therefore, a narrow definition of authenticity is problematic as far as effective leadership is concerned. His 3-point advice is that being true to yourself, maintaining strict coherence between what you feel and what you say or do, and making value-based choices. That is very important for being an authentic leadership. In other words, you should think, express, and act in an aligned fashion. If any of these three is at variance with the other two or any of the other two, then you are unlikely to be perceived as an authentic leader. It has also to be seen from an ecosystem perspective. There was a leadership theory which I talked about, which said that nobody wants to be a leader and nobody wants to start his life's journey wanting to be a leader. And the author advised, or the researcher advised, people to become what they are capable of becoming. And that's what we are actually advising through this lecture on self-actualization. While you may like to have leadership as your ultimate goal or something else as your ultimate goal, self-actualization is the key to achieving whatever you want to be achieving. And for that, you need to be authentic based on your actual capabilities, competencies, aspirations, and accomplishments. At the same time, authenticity doesn't mean extreme transparency, because as a leader, you have got certain boundaries, you have got certain parameters of confidentiality, you have certain parameters of protecting the confidentiality of your firm. Being utterly transparent, that is, disclosing every single thought and feeling, is not going to help either the team or the organization. So, authenticity has to be understood in its limits. Authenticity is an evolving construct for a leader. Authenticity is not cast in stone for a leader. It is not a core fundamental personality trait or personality approach that would hold good at all points of time in all organizations where the leader is associated with. As the leader faces new business situations and meets new internal and external stakeholders, the leader must also keep redefining and refreshing what authenticity means, and that too with discretion. High self-monitors adapt to a situation, they are concerned with their public image, they run into problems when the mask or the cover over leadership gets lifted. On the other hand, low self-monitors, they tend to be inflexible, they express their feelings too openly, they could stay on in their comfort zones for far too long. Leadership usually involves not only having good ideas, but actually pitching them to diverse stakeholders and advocating for them. Low self-monitors who tend to be inflexible find it difficult to adapt themselves to new leadership situations. Research shows, however, that this hesitancy disappears as people gain experience and become more certain and more confident of the value they bring to the table. So, low self-monitors can become high self-monitors as they evolve on their leadership journey and in the process become more confident and more authentic leaders. Can we have a concept of adaptive authenticity? That is, authenticity which reflects your true self within the boundaries which we discussed, but also helps you to learn from diverse role models, undertake continuous improvement, and be sensitive to genuine feedback. By this way, you will be truthful to your organization's requirements, truthful to yourself. You will be authentic, but also adaptive to the external and internal environment. So we have to stretch ourselves by stretching the limits of what we are. We need to do new things which make us initially uncomfortable, but that will teach us to become better leaders as we progress on the journey of achieving new things. And it doesn't require a radical personality makeover. Small changes in the way the leaders carry themselves, the way they communicate, the way they interact often make a world of difference in how effectively and authentically the leaders lead. As you go through this article by Hermenia on the authenticity paradox, you will find this and several other concepts laid out nicely. So in the ultimate analysis, let us look at the leadership performance base. It is a simple construct to evaluate. There are 4 steps. So the leadership performance triad, which is closely linked to the self-actualization stepwise development, is as follows. First, you know yourself, that is discovery of your capabilities, and try to convert your capabilities into competencies. Then you set for yourself high aspirations. Then you achieve your aspirations, and finally you actualize yourself. This is an iterative leadership journey, and these steps are extremely important for a leader to be authentic, true to oneself, match the aptitude and operational domain, and also contribute to both economic aspects as well as social aspects, use materialism to support broader social causes, and have social causes as part of the materialistic pursuits which you would have as a leader. See a larger purpose for life rather than just running a business. It could be infrastructure development, healthcare development, building a national chain. There is always a purpose larger than earning revenues and profits. And in this process, you would see self-actualization not just as an abstract leadership development process, but as a hardcore execution and delivery construct as well. Thank you.